welcome to Intentional Critical Conversations. I am your host, Academic Coordinator, Sarah Ann Samito, and I'd like to welcome you to the third installation of Intentional Critical Conversations. Remember, these conversations are critical and they are clearly with intention. We have today who has been dubbed the Wizard of Wheelock by the Boston Globe and Boston Herald, Elliot Norton Award winner, Susan Kosoff, who will be spending time with us today discussing theater and the arts and the need for the arts. However, before we do that, I'd like to remind everybody, when it comes to chatting, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat bar, and in the drop-down menu, you would select the name Mia Hazlitt. That is where you would send your questions, and she will make sure that Susan is able to answer them. However, before we get started on our journey to Susan Kosoff's story of theater, I'd like to have us hear a few words from a student, Miss Raven Berry.
Hi, I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Raven Berry and I'm studying theater at 4Cs. Why is theater important to me? Theater is important to me because with all the hate that is in the world, I can go to an inclusive space where everyone is warm and welcoming and people support you when you don't support yourself. When I hear the words diversity and inclusion, I think of acceptance and loving others instead of spreading hate. Including others instead of pushing them away just because they're different than you. I hope that you enjoyed today's presentations, and thank you.
Thank you, Raven. So before we begin our program with Susan Kosoff, I'd like to take you to the world of theater by way of Wheelock Family Theater. We have a 7-minute clip that will give you a historical background, not only of Susan Kosoff, but of Wheelock Family Theater. And here it is.
The Wheelock Family Theater has given families something I've never seen anywhere before, which is shows that are really appropriate for kids, that really entertain adults, and the level of professionalism is mind-blowing.
We love it. We come as audience members, and then my daughter was in the Ramona Quimby cast, so she's back visiting all of her friends who are here cheering on this cast. So it creates a real community.
Always bring the kids here, and I have kids of my own, so we're coming, so always a learning experience.
How many?
I've been bringing my kids for 23 years.
Wow. And when the kids didn't want to come anymore, she invited her mother.
I think what excites me about Wheelock now is exactly what inspired me to begin with, and that is that we really want to provide theater for everybody. And we do that in all kinds of ways. It's been said that we're a theater with a social agenda, and we have several ways in which we try to make theater accessible to people. We keep our ticket prices as reasonable as we can. Certainly they're probably the most reasonable for professional theater in Boston. We reach out to underserved audiences, and we have made accessibility for people with disabilities a top priority.
Theater and the transformative powers of theater, we want them to be available to all people. Certainly our focus at Wheelock Family Theater is young people, but we really want the theater arts to be available for all members of the society.
Just coming up to some steps right here.
Then we got the steps here, guys.
Well, I think it really means the world to all of us. All of a sudden, theater is accessible to the visually impaired, and we can go to a show. We don't have to depend on other people to tell us what's going on. And while we're listening to the audio description, we get all the information that we need of what's going on.
They rise. One nun hands paper and pencil to another. She takes.
To me, one of the most exciting things about the family, Wheelock Family Theater, is that we are a group of people who are showing, revealing, or however you want to put it, to an audience people of different colors, people of different ages, people of different professional experience, working together and creating something. And I think that even though the audience may not get that immediately, it is something that they will take with them. And the visual is so powerful to children. And that visual, I think, is very important. And it also is reflected in the cast members in ways that I mean, I've been in the theater for a long time, and I've never had the experience of actors saying, this is really a family here. And they feel like a part of a family. And it's not just because it's families out in the audience, it's because somehow we've created a family here at the theater that's different from any family they've ever experienced. We wanted the mission to be the college's mission, which is to improve the quality of life for children and their families, because we wanted to have a very good relationship with the college. We knew they were going to support us for many, many years.
Welcome, one and all. Today's show is filled with fun.
Live theater is something that stays with people a lot longer, I think, than television or film or the electronic games, etc. It stays with the child longer. They live it, they breathe it, they act it out, and I think they learn from the experience.
Well, it's interactive. I mean, it demands something of the people who are in an audience. I mean, for a show to work, you need that chemistry that occurs between the actor and the audience member. And I think that so much of what children are exposed to today is passive. It doesn't expect anything of them. And theater really does demand their full attention and their participation. And so because of that interactive quality, that sense of being a part of it, they take it with them, and it becomes a part of them, both intellectually and kinesthetically and in every other kind of way that is what is the magic of theater.
Fourth position, very nice. And how do we go from position to position?
Jump.
We jump, very nice. So let's go.
The education programs at Wheelock Family Theater have been central to the mission since the beginning. Often the classes use the productions as a narrative to instill the basic performing art disciplines of ensemble skills, vocalization, movement. Some of the young people are cast in the shows, and sometimes they'll go on to fame and fortune. But for most young people, it's really just like a rehearsal for life in whatever they choose to pursue.
We wanted to be inclusive. We wanted to break down the barriers that tend to separate people. When we first began the theater, what used to be called non-traditional casting was very important to us. And over the years, we changed that term to colorful casting because it included everybody. How do you convince somebody to become an artist, to get involved in theater in particular, if they don't see themselves on the stage? There has to be somebody up there with whom they can identify. And for children, first of all, it's children. And for anyone, it is certainly somebody who looks like them or thinks like them or feels the way they feel. And that was our mission, to improve the quality of life and to use theater. We really truly believe that live theater transforms lives.
You can definitely apply the words equity, access, inclusion, and diversity to Wheelock Family Theater and to Susan Kosoff. So much that their mission has been recognized by the Actors Equity Association. They have received the Rosetta Lenore prestigious award for being a hero. This is an award that was given to them in the early 2000s for being an inclusive theater. They've also been recognized by Stage Source, and they've received a Theater Hero Award. So I do not want you to wait any longer, and I'd like to bring out Sue Kosoff, who's been dubbed the Wizard of Wheelock.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sarah Ann, for your introduction and for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful series. And thank you also to Cape Cod Community College's administration for supporting this initiative. So as you know, now I'm Susan Kosoff, one of the founders of the Wheelock Family Theater. The DVD that you saw, and I'm not sure if you saw it, I saw only part of it, blacked out, and I just could hear some of it. But it was just a snapshot of the theater. I want to start by digging a little deeper into the theater's history and its raison d'etre. Surely, in most ways, the Wheelock Family Theater is like many other theaters. We all strive for excellence. We have loyal audiences, devoted boards. We worry about the deadlines, the bottom line, and bad reviews. We're committed to local designers, directors, stage managers, technicians, actors, as well as building a solid theater community among us. We care passionately about the art and craft of theater. We resonate with the power and the magic of theater to educate, to entertain, and to enrich lives. Some of us even believe, as Ben Cameron, the former president of the Theater Communications Group, said, "We do God's work." And of course, we have our own stories to tell about our particular journeys that distinguish us from one another. Our particular story started in 1981 when Andy Genzer, Tony Hancock, Jane Staub, and I conceived of a theater committed to high quality work with a social agenda. In our conception of the Wheelock Family Theater, we brought to bear all the experiences and knowledge we had gained separately and in concert at the Harwich Junior Theater and in founding the Winter Theater on Cape Cod. These experiences shaped our artistic sensibilities and shaped us personally. We drew on what we liked: allegiance to the text, the sense of family and community, the benefit of young people and adults, amateurs and professionals working together, and the value of our reach exceeding our grasp. And we rejected what we didn't like about theater: star systems of any kind, divisions between people based on role, anxiety-filled all-nighters. And we applied as best we could the lessons learned from our theatrical mentor, Betty Bobe, who founded the Harwich Junior Theater, as well as the lessons learned from our successes and our failures, of which there were an equal number. Wheelock Family Theater produced plays, musicals, and original works for intergenerational audiences. And we did it at reasonable prices. We did not want a theater of a few that only a few could afford. Our shows encompassed an eclectic lot that ran the gamut from Antigone to Lily's Purple Plastic Purse, from Romeo and Juliet to Winnie the Pooh, and from To Kill a Mockingbird to Once Upon a Mattress. Our belief, as was stated in the clip that you saw, was that theater has the power to transform lives, to break down the barriers that separate people from one another. The barriers of race and class and age and gender and physical ability. These tend to separate and isolate people from us to create an accessible, inclusive theater. And we always took pride in the company's reputation for respecting artists and audiences alike, for challenging all kinds of assumptions, especially those that relate to race and physical ability. Our main stage play selection was more traditional than avant-garde, and it was determined by our target audience, young people and their families, and families of all kinds and sorts. At times, especially in the early years of the theater, our choice of plays made us fodder for critics who wanted to dismiss us as right-wing fanatics and our choices as old chestnuts. Fortunately, the quality of our productions, national recognition for colorful casting, and innovative educational programs enabled us to prevail. Our values and our politics continue to drive our work. We routinely offered the lowest price tickets for professional theater in Boston. Indeed, we've been considered to have a sliding fee scale. And the fact is that we never turned away a person who couldn't afford the price of a ticket. Our productions are always interpreted in American Sign Language for deaf and hard of hearing people, and audio described for the blindness community. And we became the first theater in the country to open caption every single production, every single performance of every single production. Our casting policy, emblematic of the theater, is a reflection of both the real world and the insight that theater's meaning is enhanced when audience members, especially young people, have actors on stage with whom to identify. A legendary illustration occurred in the early 1980s. I think it was our second season, when an African American wearing the familiar blue suit with a big red S on his chest was an unusual sight. The little boy, who at first glimpse of the caped crusader couldn't help blurting out so all in the audience could hear, "Mom, it's Superman, and he looks just like me." Actors of color, physically challenged actors, deaf actors customarily play principal and ensemble roles on the stage. Audiences thrilled to an Asian American Cinderella or Margot Franck or Mr. Snow, a Latino Peter Pan, Sammy Goldenbaum, and Angus Tuck, an African American Queen of Hearts, Eliza Doolittle, Captain Hook, and Wizard of Oz. And to those who worry that audiences might balk at this so-called incongruity, we tell the story of the white patron who, after seeing The Sound of Music, in which Maria was played by Merle Perkins, an African-American woman, asked her white daughter if she had noticed anything in particular about Maria. And her daughter earnestly replied, "Yes, she has big feet." We counteract stereotypes every chance we got. Unless race or gender is germane to the character or to the play, we make it a rule not to cast people of color as servants. And we often cast women in roles of power. Hence, a Prospero rather than a Prospera rather than a Prospero, and a female Fagin in Oliver. Our belief that the theater experience is of unique personal consequence for folks on stage and in the audience, strengthened by our understanding of identity politics, undergirds our overarching dedication to creating a theater that plays a vital role in people's lives. That is perhaps most obvious in our education program that includes classes on site and in the community, vacation week institutes, a summer program, and a student matinee series that each year introduces thousands of low-income, primarily Boston and Cambridge public school young people to the theater. There's something especially exciting about scores of yellow school buses lined up outside the theater in a house full of young people. One of my favorite anecdotes occurred during Carousel, just before Billy Bigelow was about to kiss Julie Jordan for the first time, when a high school boy yelled out, "Go for it, Billy." Clearly he was involved. Thousands of young people have taken classes with us and hundreds have performed in our productions. There were 60 in The Trumpet of the Swan. I'm not certain any other professional theater has ever been that brave. I am certain that many in the theater community find this aspect of Wheelock pretty scary. But those actors who have braved it, who have become mentors to our young people, continually express their appreciation and amazement at what they discover about children and ultimately about themselves. That respect and affection can build self-esteem and nurture young talent beyond anyone's expectation. That demanding professionalism teaches self-discipline. That giving responsibility inspires responsible behavior. That the sense of accomplishment young people feel from doing even the tiniest of roles, and baby spiders and baby penguins come to mind, let alone some of the biggest roles they may ever play. Juliet, Stuart Little, Anna Frank, Sarah Crew, just to name a few, will give them a chance to express themselves, appreciate their own capacity to create, and in some cases will give them hope, fill a void, offer an escape from stressful situations. At best, involvement in theater can help young people to excel in all areas of their lives, and at the very least, offer them an unforgettable experience. Live theater really does transform lives. I want to close my remarks with two thoughts. One is a quote from an interview with Hillary Clinton I just read recently in the New York Times, in which she was asked if it was okay to be talking about the arts in these troubled times. This was her response. It's more than okay. I think it is necessary. Art is not a luxury. It is a necessity to feed the human spirit and mind, but also to undergird culture and the questions we ask ourselves. In a way, we need theater more than ever because we need to be reminded that we are all a part of a bigger story. And for me, the bigger story right now is how we see ourselves, how we trust each other, how we care for each other, how we govern ourselves, and we need art to guide us. Close quote. And finally, before we start our conversation, and I hope people will be asking questions, I want you to consider a quote from Oscar Wilde, in which he says, he regards theater as the greatest of all art forms, the most immediate way in which a human being can share with another human being the sense of what it is to be a human being. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your questions. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Ann now.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Wonderful. I'd like to give her a round of applause for that. If you can hit your reaction button, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Sue. Yes, one piece of important, you're welcome. One piece of important information that I'd like everybody to know, that in 1981, when Wheelock Family Theater came about, the city of Boston was just coming off of literally being on fire. It was the height of the Boston busing crisis. And it was Wheelock Family Theater that helped pull in what we called housing projects. We now use the word housing developments, but Dimmock Street, Ruggles Street, Lenox Street children all benefited from Wheelock Family Theater. So thank you, Wheelock. Thank you, Sue. So before we get on to questions, today we have, of course, some arts for you. Art is healing and arts are needed definitely today. I would like to speak a little bit about the presentations that we have coming up today. We have three, one from a faculty here who is going to be presenting T.C. Canon, a visual artist from the Chicano and Native American movement. T.C. Canon was a poet, a visual artist. You will see some of his work in the background of this faculty's clip. He also was instrumental in passing what we call the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978 for the Plains Indians. Before that time, they were persecuted and arrested and incarcerated for practicing their religious beliefs in public, and they were not allowed to go pay respects to their sacred burial grounds. So I don't want you to wait any longer. I'd like to bring up a clip, T.C. Canon Opera by Jennifer Alai, Cape Cod Community College chemistry faculty.
I'm Jennifer Alai, and I'm an associate professor of chemistry at Cape Cod Community College. The artist that I'm reading today is T.C. Canon. T.C. Canon was born in Oklahoma of Caddo and Kiowa descent. He was also a Vietnam vet. He's primarily known as a visual artist for his painting and his printmaking, but he sometimes wrote poetry to go with those visual works. In the Wonderful World of Opera was a painting commissioned by the Santa Fe Opera Company, and this is the poem that T.C. Canon wrote to go with it. When I read it, I sense a self-depreciating sense of humor being used to comment on T.C. Canon's assigned place in society. In the wonderful world of opera, I have been without a Viking helmet all my life, as I have been without an aria for 7 months, in a pitiful rapture, unheeded except by the most unobserving eye. In the wonderful world of opera, I am a stagehand in corduroys and leather hat, with a sheaf of literature well read, between acts and semi-smiles, when the stage is dark. In the wonderful world of opera, I am the recluse dwarf who dies, just as Rossini's Tuscan hero prevails, unscathed, from his lone scuffle with the forces of villainy. In the wonderful world of opera, no one remembers me now, as no one saw me then, and I am retired from that wonder world of opera. I alone am the only refugee, the only partisan, the last soldier to remain alive. My heroine still sings in the forest, east of here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So now moving on to the Black feminist movement and Tazaki Shange's piece I've prepared for you all. I hope you enjoy it. It's called Bocas, that's mouth in Spanish and in Portuguese. Bocas, a girl's geography. I hope you enjoy it.
I have a daughter, Mozambique. I have a son, Angola. Our twin Salvador and Johannesburg cannot speak the same language, but we fight the same old men in the new world. We are so hungry for the morning. We're just trying to feed our children the sun. But a long time ago, we boarded ships locked in the depth of seas. Our spirits kissed the earth. On the Atlantic side of Nicaragua, Costa Rica, our lips traced Puerto Rico and the edges of Cuba, Charleston and Savannah, and in Haiti, Haiti, we embraced liberty. Many children of the new world, but old men spit on us, shackled our limbs, but for a minute. Our cries of the Panama Canal, the Yucatan, were poured through more seas, more ships to Manila. Aha, we're back, black is back. Everybody in Manila already speaks Spanish, right? The old men sent for the Archbishop of Canterbury. Can old people be excommunicated? Can a whole continent be excommunicated? What happened to the children? Would their allegiance slip over the edge? Don't worry about Lumumba. Don't even think about Ho Chi Minh. Dead men can't procreate. So say the old man. But I have a daughter, La Habana. I have a son, Guyana. Our twins, Santiago and Brixton, cannot speak the same language. But we fight the same old men, one boy one. The same ones who think helicopters rhyme with hunger, who think patrol boats can confiscate a people, the ones whose dreams are full of none of our children. They see Mae West and Jean Harlow in whittled white cafes near Managua listening to primitive rhythms, jungles near Pétionville, with bejeweled, benign natives ice skating in Abidjan. Unaware of the rest of us black folks in Chicago, all the dark urchins rounding out the globe, primitively whispering, the earth is not flat, old men. There is no edge, no end to the new world. Because I have a daughter, Trinidad and Tobago. I have a son, our twins, Cape Town and Palestine, cannot speak the same language. But we fight the same old men. The same old men who thought the earth was flat. Go on over the edge, old man. Please do. Go on over the edge. You'll see us in Luanda, or the rest of us in Chi-Town, Chicago, rounding out the morning sun. We're just trying to feed our children the morning sun.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Now, definitely, last but not least, we have an Elliot Norton award-winning actor. He has received an award. He didn't tell us that he received it. I had to conduct some research on him for Most Promising Young Actor. This young man is going to bring you to your feet with Harlem by Langston Hughes. Let's give it up for Cape Cod Community College student Will Moser.
Hi, my name is Will Moser, and today I will be performing Harlem by Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? Thank you.
Background on Will. Will has performed in Urinetown here at Cape Cod Community College. He's also performed at Howard's Junior Theater, Wheelock Family Theater, and New Repertory Theater. So now I'd like to open this up for questions. Remember, I said go to the chat bar, the drop down, and click on Mia Hazlitt's name and filter all your questions through her. I'm sure you have a lot of questions to ask Sue. And thank you for coming to our program, our third installation of Intentional Critical Conversation.
Okay, our first question is from Elizabeth Raposa. Can our students audition or get involved in their programs if they're not Wheelock students? If yes, how?
Yes, absolutely. Auditions are open to everyone. Unfortunately, we're not doing too much auditioning currently with the COVID happening. So probably the best way is to go to the Stage Source hotline or to call the theater and ask to be put on the list, which sends notices as to when auditions will be held. Everybody is invited to audition.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any more, but I have a question for you. How has it been received when maybe you do change a leading role that maybe is supposed to be, whether from literature, from movies, played by someone who was white in the movie or maybe even the book, and then you change that role to a diverse role? How has that been received?
Well, I would say generally it has been received well, occasionally not so well. But I think that one of the things that we we've tried to do is to use it as an opportunity for conversation. I really do think that for the most part, people have except it really hasn't necessarily made a dent, at least especially with young people. They really accept colorful casting and don't question it because they're not bothered so much by the tradition. Because often it is simply tradition that has dictated that certain parts be played by certain kinds of people. And it makes for very interesting conversations in families when those traditions get challenged. And it, for the most part, has not been a problem. The one time I think that it was an issue was when most of the pirates in Peter Pan were people of color, and there were some people who, well, not some people, there was a person who felt that we were casting all the bad guys as people of color. So it was an interesting way of objecting. And when I brought it up with the actors, I mean, actors love to play bad guys. They're often the meaty parts and the fun parts. So it didn't affect them that way. And I thought it was worth thinking about that we had in fact done that. So, I mean, that was a time when we actually had a Latina woman playing Peter Pan. So I think that I actually think it was more balanced than the criticism, but it was worth thinking about the criticism.
Right. Okay, we have another question here. Let's see. From Mary Cronin, a Wheelock alum, what insights or advice about establishing an open, inclusive, and diverse culture can Wheelock Family Theater offer to academia?
Could you repeat the question? I'm not sure.
Sure. What insights or advice about establishing an open, inclusive, and diverse culture can Wheelock Family Theater offer to academia?
Well, I think that, I mean, one of the things that a former president of Wheelock, Marjorie Bakken, said at one point was that the theater really led the college in creating a diverse environment. That eventually Wheelock College became much more diverse because of the Wheelock Family Theater. Colorful casting and inclusive casting. I think that that's probably true. So I guess what I think is that people have to make the first steps and have a commitment to that. The truth is that when we first started the theater, many of the actors of color in Boston had left and had gone to New York or to LA or other places. So there weren't a great many actors with equity cards who were even in Boston, and we really had to seek them out. And many of the people were very hesitant because they had always been cast as servants. That was kind of the only roles that were available to many of them. And so you have to, it's like everything else, I guess. You have to make a commitment and then act consistently, continue to act consistently. I mean, the same thing was true in terms of our audiences for interpreted performances, that you had to be consistent about always interpreting a production in American Sign Language so that the deaf community, the people hard of hearing, the deaf people, knew that they could trust that you were going to do it. And what happened with actors of color was they began to see that, yes, they were going to be able to play major roles, and they weren't, and ensemble roles, but that they were going to get cast. that that it was possible. And so once that began to be established, many of the actors of color in Boston got their equity cards through us and trusted us. And I think that presence on the campus influenced the college. I know it did.
Okay. I have a question from Lisa Halliburgine. Thank you for speaking with us. I am a longtime patron of your shows, have been with my kids for several years. I'm wondering if you see a path forward for live theater during COVID. What can we do to support the theater during these times?
That's a tough one. I know that the Harwich Junior Theater, Cape Cod Theater Company, in which I'm a member of the board and a longtime supporter, and, is now talking about doing outdoor theater in the spring and summer. And fortunately, we have a large parking lot and we'll be able to, I think, manage that. I honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, a friend of mine said, and I think it's true, that the large, well-endowed theaters will do all right. And the fringe theaters, the smaller theaters that never have had any much money, could also do all right. The worry is the middle-sized regional theaters. You know, I think it's going to be a real challenge to continue. But I believe, because you know, theater has existed, I think, ever since for eons, and I think it will come back, but it may be slow. And I do think that Broadway will come back, but not, you know, not roaring back, but it will come back. Fortunately, I think theaters are finding ways to do performances online, but it's not the same. I mean, theater is, by very definition, is live. So you know, it's been very hard on all of us who care so deeply about theater, and I think on theater goers.
Okay.
It wasn't very helpful, but I tried.
Okay, from Donna Walker, what kind of outreach, if any, do you do in communities of color to bring in inclusive audiences?
Oh, a lot. We, first of all, our student matinee series, which allows tickets to be, you know, tickets are not very expensive through the student matinee series, so that schools can afford it. But the schools can become partners with the theater, and part of that partnership is a workshop before the students come to the show with perhaps with one of the actors or one of our artist educators. They come to the show, and when they come to the show, they get a button, and that button allows them to come back to the show, given that there's room to any performance. And usually what happens then is that a lot of those people come with 3 or 4 family members. So it's a way of reaching out into the community via the student matinee series. In addition to that, we made outreach efforts to Boys and Girls Clubs, to Big Sisters and Big Brothers associations. We talked to different settlement houses, you know, the Ella Baker House, different places like that, to bring people. And, you know, for many, many people, it was their first opportunity to see live theater.
Okay. From Elizabeth Raposa, do you cast both equity and non-equity actors?
Yes. The theater has what's called a letter of agreement with Actors Equity Association. I want to tell you funny story that when we first applied to Actors Equity, and Jane Staub, who was one of the founders and a member of Equity herself at the time, we decided she was the best person to negotiate with Actors Equity on our behalf. And when she presented the budget, the theater's budget, to the folks at Actors Equity, they said it was the smallest budget they had ever seen in the history of theater. But to their credit, because of our commitment to access and to inclusive casting and to diversity casting, colorful casting, they allowed us to become a member. And when we first started, we had, I think it was, we were allowed two actors of two equity actors per production. And that grew, plus a stage manager. And then it grew until I think now the number is 8 to 10. Now, lots of theaters in Boston, that would be everybody in the cast, but many of our casts were quite large. And so it wasn't our whole cast at all. And we wanted to always maintain parts for people who were not equity. So it's a mix of equity and non-equity actors.
Okay.
And people who are not in equity, like Sarah Ann, when she first came to the theater, was not in equity, but she was able to be a part of the program that you get credit for being in equity productions and eventually can get your equity card that way.
Okay, and now we have you ever adapted a book to stage?
Yes, actually, I've adapted several. I've adapted Secret Garden. I've adapted Little Princess. Most recently, I did Wolf Hollow, which is a young person's book written by a woman who lives on the Cape, actually, and it was a huge. The book was a huge success. Lauren Walk wrote the book. And Nina Schussler, our artistic director, approached her about the possibility of having it adapted for the Harwich Junior Theater, and asked me if I would do that. And I met with Lauren. She's lovely, generous person. And we produced it a few years ago, and I think it was quite a big success. And that was my most recent adaptation.
Okay. In a time where education focuses so much on career outcomes and less so on developing the whole student, how can we advocate for arts education at all levels?
It's a $64,000 question. I think it has been really upsetting to see how the arts have been the first to go in schools. And I think it's a crime. I think it's a shame because, as we know, different people learn in different ways, and it would be, I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I think that I can't do better than that. It's a great question. It's worth thinking about.
All right. Do you ever do plays in other languages, such as Spanish?
I haven't ever done that. No, I haven't.
Okay. How do you attract young and old actors to your theater and reach out to all cultural communities?
Well, the theater belonged to Stage Source, which is the organization for theater artists and theaters in New England.
Okay.
And they have a hotline that you can use you can register with, and also you can join and get notices of about the theater. You have a public relations effort, and you do all the usual things. You create flyers, you tap into other organizations' mailing lists, you word of, the truth is, and it sounds like a cliche, but word of mouth is incredibly important. And you slowly gain a reputation, both within the theater community and outside of it, for the kinds of work you do and the kinds of programs you want to provide.
Okay, and we're going on our last question. What is your favorite production and why?
Favorite production that I've seen, or the favorite production I've directed?
There is the favorite to have directed.
Well, I don't have one, but I have several. Is that okay?
That's fine.
I love directing Lord of the Flies with a cast of young, boys, young men. They were, I guess, probably from the age of about 10 to 20. That was a very, very exciting production. And it was a wonderful experience, I think, for all of us. Recently I directed Billy Elliot, and I loved directing that. And just last fall, I directed Doubt. And your very Aunt Sarah Ann was in it, playing the mother, and she was quite wonderful. It was a very small production in a small space, but it was very, very satisfying. I think the play's excellent, and I had a great cast. And after having, directed shows with 30 and 40 people, it was really kind of nice to direct one with 4. So, different plays have fulfilled different needs at different times. I mean, sometimes it's been exciting because it's new. Sometimes it's exciting because it was a play that I always liked and got to finally work on. So, I think it varies, but I did learn a long time ago not to direct anything that I didn't like. If it didn't really capture my imagination and something that I could resonate with, then it wasn't worth doing, because I wasn't going to do it justice, and it was going to make me unhappy. So, I think that you learn what you're going to like both by reading it, maybe by having seen a production, and sometimes plays that I thought I was going to really, really love turned out to be not bad, but not as exciting as something else.
Okay, well, thank you so much for answering all our questions. I'm going to turn the floor back over to Sarah Ann right now. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. And I'd like to give her a virtual round of applause, a physical round of applause. Thank you so much for all your service on Cape and off Cape in Suffolk County, Barnstable County. Thank you so much. So before—
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. And before we wrap up today, I'd like to just let you all know that on December 1st, we will be having our last speaker, Sergeant Eddie Crispin, come to Cape Cod Community College. He will be streamed from the Tilden Art Center. There will not be an audience. However, you will get a chance to actually be inside virtually the Art Center from 2 to 3:30. So please, December 1st, 2 to 3:30, continue to check out the IDEA page. Sergeant Crispin, before becoming a sergeant with the Boston Police Department, was a social worker, a youth outreach worker, an adult and juvenile probation officer, and a lawyer. All this done before being a police officer for the past 21 years in the city of Boston. So thank you all for logging on. Stay well, stay lifted, stay safe. Thank you.